What happens when a CEO dresses in rags and walks into one of his own stores and no one knows who he is? Darren Stokes zipped up the old windbreaker and looked at himself in the mirror of the gas station bathroom. His normally neat brown hair was flattened under a faded baseball cap, and a patchy beard covered the lower half of his face. He looked like someone who hadn't had a good night's sleep in weeks, which was exactly the point. It had been 6 months since he'd inherited his father's 6-store diner chain. The business had been solid for decades, but lately, Darren had been getting troubling reports, 1-star reviews piling up in certain locations, a few complaints about rude staff, and even whispers of customers being turned away. But every time he asked his district manager, he got the same answer. It's under control. He didn't believe it. So, he picked the location with the most complaint store for, northeast side of town, and decided to walk in dressed like a down-on-his-luck customer. No camera crew, no assistant, just him and a wallet with no cards, a few crumpled bills, and a story. He had never personally visited this store. His father had handled that side, and the staff had turned over since. Plus, being a corporate setup with layers of management, most employees had no idea what the CEO even looked like. As he approached the building, he noticed chipped paint on the sign and a cracked window near the side door. He stepped inside and paused. The place wasn't too busy, only 4 tables occupied, but the energy felt cold. No music. A waitress with tired eyes stood behind the counter, slowly wiping down menus. Darren shuffled in, keeping his head low, and headed toward the cashier. A tall man in a perfectly ironed shirt stood behind the register. He didn't smile. Darren nodded politely. "Hey, sir. I was hoping to get something warm. Maybe just a coffee and a biscuit?" The man's eyes dropped to Darren's old shoes and stained jacket. "We don't serve people who can't pay up front." "I've got cash," Darren replied, pulling out a wrinkled $5 bill. "It's not much," but the manager cut him off. "Yeah, and I bet you'll pay me back later, too. Look, this ain't a soup kitchen. Either you order something and stop wasting time, or get out." Across the room, a young employee with curly red hair peeked up from the dish station. She looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. "I just want a coffee," Darren said calmly. "I'm not asking for anything free." "Sure you're not," the man said, voice rising. "You people always come in here acting like you're owed something. You think because you look homeless we should feel bad." Darren's hands clenched in his pockets. He kept his voice steady. "What's your name?"
"Why?
"You planning to complain? Go ahead. I'm the manager. This is my store when I'm on shift. You got a problem, you can take it up with someone who cares." Darren nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll do that." He turned and walked toward the door, but a soft voice stopped him. "Sir? Wait." The red-haired girl was now behind the counter, biting her lip. "I'll get you a coffee. Don't worry about the money." Before Darren could reply, the manager stormed over. "Fiona, what the hell are you doing?" "I'm giving him a coffee," she said, voice trembling but firm. "You didn't have to talk to him like that." "She's fired," the manager snapped. "You don't get to, no," Darren said, turning around. His voice dropped. "She's not." The manager blinked. "I'm sorry, who are you?" he asked mockingly. Darren reached into his pocket and pulled out a black leather wallet. He flipped it open, revealing his ID. "Darren Stokes. I own this company." The room went silent. The manager's face drained of all color. His mouth opened, then closed again. Fiona's eyes widened.
"Wait.
Yes." Darren turned to her. "And thank you for treating a stranger like a human being." He looked back at the manager, who was now frozen, shoulders stiff. A few customers had turned in their seats to watch. "I'll be back tomorrow," Darren said. "With security, with HR, and with the district manager. We're not done here." He turned and walked out, leaving the door swinging behind him. Darren's boots hit the pavement with deliberate rhythm as he walked back to his car. The cold air felt sharper than before. His jaw was locked tight, and for several minutes, he just sat behind the wheel, staring through the windshield, replaying the scene. The way that manager Rodney, his name tag had said, spoke without hesitation, without shame, like he'd done it 100 times. Darren didn't need to sleep on it. His next move was already forming. He pulled out his phone and placed a call. Carla. Yeah. I need you at store 4 first thing tomorrow. Bring HR. We're doing a full audit. He paused, then added, and call Jeff for maintenance. That front sign's been an eyesore for long enough. The next morning, Darren returned not in disguise this time, but in a navy button-down and slacks. The tie stayed in the car. He wanted respect, not formality. When he arrived, Fiona was already there, tying her apron behind the counter. She looked up and froze when she saw him. You came back, she said, voice low. I said I would, Darren replied. You here on shift? She nodded slowly. Supposed to start in 15. I came early. Figured I'd get ahead of prep. Before Darren could respond, Carla stepped through the front door, followed by 2 HR reps and a middle-aged man in overalls carrying a toolbox. Rodney appeared from the back hallway, his posture rigid. His eyes flicked between Darren and the others, then settled on the HR reps. What's going on? He asked, voice tight. You're done, Darren said flatly. Effective immediately. Rodney threw up his hands. You can't just. Carla stepped forward. We can. And we are. You'll be escorted out while we complete documentation. Rodney's face turned bright red. You're firing me because I didn't want to serve some trash off the street? No, Darren said. You're being fired for harassment, flagrant disrespect, and violating both our employee and customer conduct policies. And that's not up for debate. Rodney opened his mouth again, but Carla cut in sharply. Stop talking. Go clean out your things. Rodney stared at her, then Darren, then turned and stormed out through the back. The door banged hard behind him. Fiona stood silent behind the counter, hands clasped in front of her. You okay? Darren asked. She nodded, but her voice trembled. I didn't know if I'd still have a job when I came in. You shouldn't have had to worry about that, Darren said. You did the right thing. That counts for something here. She gave a small nod, eyes not quite meeting his. Darren didn't press. While Carla and the HR team began interviewing the remaining staff, Darren stepped into the kitchen. The line was manned by 2 cooks in their early 20s. One of them, a wiry guy with a sleeve of tattoos, was flipping pancakes with practiced rhythm. The other was prepping vegetables, headphones dangling from one ear. Neither looked up at first. You fellas been here long? Darren asked. The one with the tattoos turned. You're the guy from yesterday. I am. He nodded once.
I'm some.
This is Kyle. We've been keeping this place going since our last lead cook quit.
That was.
What? 3 weeks ago. Kyle pulled his headphone out. Almost 4. Rodney said he was handling it. Never hired anyone. Darren leaned against the prep table, arms crossed. You two been pulling doubles? Since the 2nd week of January, Sam said. We're barely keeping up during rushes. Orders pile up, and we get blamed when they're late. What about breaks? Kyle gave a humorless laugh. We eat standing up if we're lucky.
Can't leave the line.
Rodney said if we slowed down, we'd be replaced. That's not how we operate, Darren said quietly. Sam raised an eyebrow. You sure? Because that's how it's been. I'm sure, Darren said. There are going to be changes. He moved into the back stockroom, where the dry goods were kept. The shelves were half empty. Some of the boxes had expiration dates creeping dangerously close. A note was taped to one of the walls. Supply chain issues. Make do. Darren scowled. Back out front, Carla was finishing up a conversation with the cashier. Darren stepped over. Anything? He asked. Most of them were scared to speak freely, Carla said. But they opened up once they realized Rodney's gone. Apparently, he's been pulling this stunt for months. Not just with customers. Staff, too. Threats, verbal abuse, even cutting hours when someone spoke up. Why didn't anyone report it to corporate? Carla lowered her voice. They did. But the complaints didn't make it past the district layer. I'm pulling records now. If someone was suppressing reports, we'll find out. Darren nodded once.
Good.
I want a full trace of every complaint filed from this location since last fall. He turned and caught Fiona, wiping down a booth near the window. She was working with focus, moving from one tabletop to the next. Darren walked over. You said you've been here a while, he said. Since last summer. I started part-time. Stayed because I needed the hours. You ever think about management? She looked up, surprised. No one's ever asked me that. Well, I'm asking now. You've got the right instincts. You didn't freeze up yesterday. You acted. That matters. She hesitated, then said, I'd want to do it right. Actually support people. Not just bark orders. That's exactly what I want. He gave her a card. Come by HQ next week. We'll talk. She looked at the card, then him, her brow furrowed. Why are you really doing all this? Most execs don't show up unless it's a photo op. Darren paused. Because I stopped paying attention. I trusted systems that weren't working. That's on me. And I don't fix that from a boardroom. She studied him for a moment, then nodded.
All right.
Then I'll show up. Just before noon, Darren stepped outside to take a call. Across the parking lot, a man in a delivery uniform was wrestling with a dolly stacked with boxes. Darren jogged over and helped steady it. Thanks, the man said. No one usually comes out. Short staff.
Yeah.
And whoever placed the last few orders must have guessed half the inventory. I got 8 gallons of syrup and almost no coffee beans. Darren winced. I'll take care of it, he said. Back inside, he found Carla again. Get procurement on the line. I want this store's supply chain reviewed top to bottom. And find out who's approving these orders. She nodded and stepped away. By early afternoon, the store felt different. Not fixed but lighter. The staff spoke a little more freely. The tension had eased just enough to notice. Darren met Sam again near the back sink. You need another cook, Darren said. We'll have someone here within a week. In the meantime, we'll bring in a floater from another store. Sam raised an eyebrow. You're serious about this? I don't show up unless I'm serious.
Well.
Then you might want to check the freezer, Sam said. Rodney had the temp turned down because he said the electric bill was too high. Darren frowned. Show me. Inside the walk-in freezer, a sour smell hit immediately. Ice crystals clung to exposed packaging. 2 boxes of meat were unsealed. A thermometer pinned to the wall read 10 degrees too warm. Darren shook his head. This is a health code violation. Sam nodded. We told him. He said if we didn't like it, we could pay the bill ourselves. Darren stepped back out and called Carla again. Get the health inspector from our compliance team over here.
Today.
And get rid of everything in that freezer. I don't care what it costs. Darren spent the rest of the day walking the floor, observing. He didn't give speeches. He listened. Quietly. Closely. Every time someone spoke, he took notes. When the day ended, he left with 2 full pages of fixes, not one of which required a motivational poster or a new slogan. The next morning, he'd be back again. Not just as the owner, but as someone who remembered what it meant to lead from the floor. The sun hadn't yet cleared the rooftops when Darren pulled into the lot again. The building still looked tired, faded trim, rust around the base of the signage post, but the atmosphere was different inside. Not fixed. Just less tense. He stepped through the door as Fiona was tying her apron again, this time with a clipboard tucked under one arm. She glanced up, nodded, and returned to checking the condiment bins without hesitation. A quiet acknowledgement. Not fear. Not awkwardness. Just work. In the back office, Carla was already seated with two laptops open, one hand holding a half-eaten granola bar. Darren leaned against the doorframe. Anyone from the compliance team show yet? They're in the freezer now. Toss the entire back stock, she said. The inspector from HQ flagged it as a critical risk. Said it's the worst he's seen in over a year. Any blowback? Not on us. But the regional facilities supervisor signed off last month's inspection virtually. Never stepped foot on site. That's an issue. Darren pushed off the doorframe. Get his supervisor on a call. If he's signed off without visiting, that's falsification. I want a full review of every location he's responsible for. Carla nodded once. Already in motion. As Darren stepped back into the dining area, a tired-looking man in his late 50s was mopping near the front window. His uniform shirt had a stitched name tag, Luis. He paused when he noticed Darren, then returned to his work. "You've been working mornings here long?" Darren asked. Luis straightened, resting both hands on the mop handle. "Since last year. They keep scheduling me open to close. Said they're short on janitorial, so I do it all." "You get 2 breaks in that time?" Luis shook his head. Rodney said breaks were only for full-time staff with contracts. I'm listed as part-time, even though I work over 50 hours. Darren exhaled slowly. "You're getting full benefits starting next week. HR will convert your status immediately. You should have had it months ago." "I didn't want to complain," Luis said quietly. "I've got a daughter in school. Just needed the paycheck. You shouldn't have to choose between stability and being treated fairly." Luis gave a slow nod, then returned to mopping, his shoulders a little less hunched. At 11:30, a silver SUV pulled into the lot and parked in the rear. A tall man in a pressed charcoal suit stepped out, adjusting his tie as he approached the back entrance. Carla saw him through the security monitor and looked up. "That's Anthony Keene, district manager." Darren didn't wait for introductions. He walked straight to the back hallway and intercepted him. "You're late." Keene blinked. "Excuse me? You were supposed to be here at 9. It's nearly noon." There was traffic. There was no traffic on the route from the West office. "I checked." Keene's jaw tightened. "I wasn't aware this was a disciplinary visit. I was told there was a staffing matter." Darren folded his arms. "You've had multiple complaints from this location. Verbal abuse, schedule manipulation, and HR violations. You filed each one as resolved. Want to explain that?" Keene scoffed. "We get dozens of complaints a week. Most are exaggerated. If we chased everyone, we'd never get through a fiscal quarter. You didn't follow up on a single one from this store. Not even the documented ones. You marked them closed without speaking to staff. That's not oversight. That's willful neglect. I've been managing 12 locations. We're stretched thin. Then you should have said something. Instead, you rubber-stamped reports to keep your numbers clean." Keene's voice dropped. "This is a lower-income branch. Turnover's constant. You start making waves every time someone gets their feelings hurt, you'll be replacing half the staff every month." Darren stared at him for several seconds. "You're done." Keene blinked again, slower this time. "What?" "You're dismissed. Effective immediately. Pack up your things at the West office. You no longer represent this company. You can't I just did. We'll have your replacement sourced by end of week. Until then, I'm managing this region personally." Keene opened his mouth, but Darren turned his back and walked away. Inside the kitchen, Sam and Kyle were juggling a growing lunch rush. Fiona was now helping run food, darting between tables with practiced ease. No one asked her she just saw the need and filled it. Darren stepped beside her as she returned with 2 empty plates. "You ever train new hires?" he asked. She nodded. "Last year. Before the assistant manager quit. I handled onboarding for about a month." "You think you could do it again, on top of your current shift?" Her eyebrows rose. You offering a promotion? I'm offering a transition. We don't have the coverage to pull you off the floor completely, but we need someone here who gets how things should run. You'll get the pay bump immediately. Title changes next month. Who do I report to? Until I find someone better me. She gave a slight grin, then grabbed the next tray. In the back hallway, Carla waved Darren down. Got a name you'll want to see, she said, handing him a printed report. Rodney's younger brother. Works part-time at store 2. Guess who referred him in? Darren scanned the paper. Rodney listed himself as a regional trainer. He's not. Never was. He added that title to the system manually. Bring in IT. I want a full audit of everyone with back-end access. If anyone's been inflating positions, we need to catch it now. Already queued. An hour later, a woman in a blue polo and clipboard stepped through the front door. Inventory support, she said, introducing herself simply as Dana. HQ sent me to do a full reset. We're tossing everything close to expiration and reordering based on actual volume. Darren nodded. Good. Let me know what you need. She glanced around. This place is running on muscle memory. You've got 3 people doing the work of 7. That's changing. Hope so, Dana said. Because the rest of the stores are watching. Word's already out about what happened. Darren raised an eyebrow.
How?
One of the cooks posted about it. Said the owner showed up dressed like a broke guy and fired the devil. People are talking. Darren didn't respond right away. Then, let them. Maybe they'll start looking at their own stores a little closer. By late afternoon, the volume dipped. The lull between lunch and dinner offered a rare window of calm. Kyle leaned against the prep counter, sipping water, and looked at Darren. You gonna be here every day? For now. Kyle nodded.
All right.
Long as you don't start asking us to call you, sir. Darren chuckled. Not a chance. In the far corner, Fiona was walking a new hire through the register functions, a kid barely out of high school, eyes wide but focused. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She just taught. Darren stood near the door, arms crossed, watching the floor move. Not perfect, not smooth, but honest. And finally, headed in the right direction. By the following Monday, Darren was at store 4 before sunrise. He parked off to the side, sipping a burnt drive-through coffee while watching the first shift file in. Fiona arrived just ahead of the opening crew, clipboard in hand, her stride purposeful. She didn't look toward the parking lot. She didn't need to. Inside, the lights flickered on one by one, humming against the quiet clatter of prep. Sam and Kyle moved like they'd slept a little longer, still tired but not brittle. A new line cook, a quiet woman named Denise, had started that morning. She was older, maybe mid-40s, and moved with the deliberate calm of someone who'd worked in kitchens longer than most people had been eating in them. Darren stepped in through the back entrance and washed his hands at the utility sink before joining them. No clipboard today? Sam asked, flipping on the flat top.
Didn't need one, Darren said.
I remember what I saw. Kyle looked up from the prep table. You still planning to run this place yourself? Just until the rebuild's stable. After that, I'll stay out of the way unless someone gives me a reason not to. Denise glanced over her shoulder without pausing. You the one who canned Rodney? I am. Good, she said, returning to her slicing. I don't like yelling. Never did. Darren glanced at the clock. You okay on stations this morning? We're tight but manageable, Sam said, then pointed at a laminated sheet on the wall. Fiona built a new rotation chart. Nobody's pulling doubles without relief. Darren walked to the front of the house. Fiona was reviewing inventory logs at the register. She looked up as he approached. Any issues with the early shift? Dana flagged a supply delay, she said. But we adjusted. Denise brought her own knives. Said she couldn't work with anything that wasn't sharp. She always that blunt. She said she doesn't believe in small talk until 10 a.m. Darren nodded toward the dining area. You filled the hostess post? Not yet. I'm rotating coverage with a new hire, Celia. She's got good instincts, but freezes during peak. Train her hard this week. If she's not ready by Friday, we'll reassess. Fiona scratched a note on her clipboard. You still want me doing register backups?
No.
Focus on floor oversight and onboarding. I'll have someone from Store 1 cover register gaps until we hire internally. The day moved steadily. The lunch rush hit harder than expected. Word had spread locally, and customers were giving the store another chance. Some were openly curious. One man ordered a coffee, leaned in, and asked if the rude manager was really gone. Fiona answered with a short nod and moved on. At 2 o'clock, Darren sat with Carla in the back office. She had a laptop open and a spreadsheet pulled up. We finished the employee classification audit, she said. 2 more stores had part-timers working over 45 hours a week. Both cases were flagged and corrected. Disciplinary action? Already issued. One manager demoted. The other accepted a transfer to non-supervisory. Darren leaned back in the chair. And the IT audit? 7 unauthorized title changes across the company. All reversed. Passwords reset. We've added 2-step verification for backend access going forward. Who signed off on the override permissions? Rodney. He submitted the request last fall through the old regional system. It was never escalated. Darren let out a slow breath. Anything else? Carla hesitated. Fiona's employment file had a performance warning from 2 months ago. It was written by Rodney and filed manually.
No witnesses.
No incident report. Deleted. Add a note. Invalid submission.
No supporting documentation.
Carla did so without comment. Later that afternoon, Darren stepped outside to take a call from legal. When he came back in, he found Fiona sitting with Celia near the front window, walking her through a floor plan diagram sketched in pen. She wasn't instructing so much as walking beside her, asking questions, nudging her to find the answers herself. Celia was nodding, still uncertain but clearly trying. Darren waited until they finished. When Fiona stood, he motioned toward the back hallway. Got a second? She followed him past the break area and into the small office. He gestured for her to sit. I'm promoting you officially, he said. Title change to assistant floor supervisor. Full benefits. Retroactive pay increase, starting last week. She blinked. That's fast. You're already doing the job. This just makes it formal. Fiona crossed her arms loosely. You sure this isn't just a band-aid? I've worked enough places where people get promoted to shut them up. Darren met her gaze. If this place collapses again in 6 months, that's on me. I'm not patching anything. I'm rebuilding. You're part of that if you want to be. She didn't answer immediately. Then, all right. But if I see this start to slide, I'm not waiting for permission. I'll say something. Good, Darren said, standing. That's why you're in the seat. The next morning, a corporate HR rep arrived with 2 laptops and a folding table. She set up outside the staff room and began conducting exit interviews for any employee who'd worked under Rodney for more than 3 months. It was optional, but nearly everyone signed up. By Thursday, Darren had already begun transitioning oversight back to Carla. He spent more time observing than speaking, watching how the systems held without his hand on them. In the kitchen, Denise had fully taken over early line prep. She didn't speak much, but Sam and Kyle had already adjusted their workflow around her. The line moved faster, now more precise. Less scrambling. At one point, Darren caught Kyle at the sink and asked, You still running on fumes? Less fumes. More like half a tank now. Darren nodded. We'll get you to full eventually. That afternoon, a delivery truck arrived on time, properly stocked. Dana had already restructured the order schedule to match real volume, and it showed. The walk-in was organized, labeled, and temperature stable. Outside, Darren stood by the employee exit, watching the crew change over for dinner service. It was subtle, the shift, no grand speeches, no applause. Just people showing up, doing the job without dread. Carla joined him, arms folded. "You think it sticks?" she asked. "It has to," Darren said. "I'm not rebuilding this again. You handled it the right way. No noise. Just action." "No choice," he said. "Once you see it for yourself, you can't unsee it." They stood in silence a while longer. Before Darren left, he walked once more through the dining area. Fiona was behind the counter, reviewing a break schedule with a new hostess. She caught his eye briefly, then returned to her task. Darren pushed open the door and stepped into the evening air. The sign above the building still needed repainting. The siding still needed work. But the place had something now it hadn't before. A future. And this time, it was being built from the inside out.